Okay, comparing and contrasting the ovarian cycle versus the menstrual cycle, and then kind of an overview of what's happening with the hormone levels. With our ovarian, we have 3 phases: the follicular phase, the ovulation, and the luteal phase. With the follicular phase, this is days 1 through 13, and the follicle is developing to maturity. And this is stimulated by FSH. At ovulation, this is day 14, and it's stimulated by a spike of LH. So ovulation occurs due to a large increase in LH. And this is the release of the secondary oocyte. Once the oocyte is released, the follicle then becomes what we call the corpus luteum. Following ovulation is the luteal phase. Now these are days 15 through 28. This phase, progesterone, it inhibits LH, and if not fertilized, the corpus luteum will degenerate. If fertilized, the corpus luteum, if the oocyte is fertilized, then the corpus luteum will continue to release estrogen and progesterone. So there's kind of 2 paths depending on what happens with the egg. Is it fertilized or not? If not, then the corpus luteum will degenerate. If it is, it will continue to produce estrogen and progesterone. With our menstrual cycle, we have 4 primary phases. We have our menstrual, our proliferative, our secretory, and our premenstrual phase. The menstrual phase is the shedding of the stratum functionalis, so that internal lining of the uterus that helps feed the embryo when it's implanted. And this is about day 1 to 5. The second phase, the proliferative phase, this is day 6 through 13, and this starts the regeneration of the functionalis, and it's stimulated by estrogen that's being released from the follicle. So that regeneration phase, we're starting to grow up. Ovulation occurs on day 14, and then the secretory phase, day 15 through 26, we have progesterone stimulating the thickening of the lining. So the functionalis is now thickening. So the stratum functionalis is thickening in our secretory phase. The final phase is premenstrual. And like with the luteal phase, it has 2 courses of action. This is day 27 and 28 of the cycle. If a pregnancy occurs, HCG from the fetus helps to stimulate and maintain the functionalis, that endometrial lining, so that implantation can occur. If not pregnant, then that functionalis starts to degenerate and break down, which then will lead to the menstrual cycle. Our menstrual and proliferative phase overlap with our follicular phase from the ovarian. Ovulation occurs at the same time in both phases, day 14. The secretory phase and the premenstrual phase overlap with our luteal phase in timing. And we can also see a trend in what's happening with the hormones. They're kind of grouped. You have your LH and your FSH versus your estrogen and your progesterone. And their balances and their levels are opposite of each other. So in the first few weeks, the first 14 days, we have high levels of FSH and LH and low levels of estrogen and progesterone. Towards the timing of ovulation, we have this increase in estrogen occurring as it's being released more from the follicle. Or at ovulation, or what triggers ovulation, we have a large spike in LH. And then after ovulation, the LH levels and FSH levels drop and the estrogen and progesterone levels rise. Now in the beginning, high FSH and LH, low estrogen and progesterone. Towards the end, it's the reverse, low LH and FSH and high estrogen and progesterone. One thing to keep in mind too is that these dates aren't necessarily set in stone. They can vary slightly from woman to woman, but this is the norm, kind of what you're typically going to see. It might be shorter by a day or two, it might be longer than a day or two, depending on the woman.